The prison gate opened at 7:15 on a cold October morning. I had imagined that moment for 2 years, but freedom did not feel the way I expected. There was no music, no warm sunlight, and no family running toward me. There was only a gray sky, a paper bag holding my clothes, and my son standing beside a black sedan with an envelope in his hand. Nathan did not bring me a coat. He did not ask whether I had eaten. He held out the envelope before I had taken 3 steps beyond the gate. "Sign this, Dad, and we can finally put the past behind us." His voice had the smooth patience he used when speaking to people he considered difficult. I opened the envelope. The agreement offered me $25,000 for my remaining interest in Coal Industrial Supply. It also required me to accept the evidence and testimony from my criminal case as true, promise never to challenge the company's ownership, and surrender every future claim against Nathan. 2 years earlier, my shares had been worth several $1,000,000. More important, my wife Ellen and I had spent 34 years building that company from a rented warehouse with a leaking roof. Nathan was offering me less than the price of a new pickup truck for our life's work. "Vanessa write this?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "The attorneys did. Vanessa is trying to keep the company stable." I looked past him. Across the road, a blue sedan sat beneath a bare maple tree. Detective Lena Ortiz was behind the wheel. A state investigator named Paul Mercer sat beside her. They did not wave. They were not there to welcome me home. Nathan mistook my silence for weakness. "You need money. You need somewhere to live. I arranged a furnished apartment near the bus line. Sign today and I'll pay the first 3 months." I folded the agreement and put it back in the envelope. Did Vanessa sign her new chief financial officer contract yet? For the first time that morning, my son looked uncertain. To understand why that question mattered, you have to understand the company and the family we had once been. Ellen and I started Coal Industrial Supply in 1987. I repaired conveyor motors, and she kept the books at our kitchen table after Nathan went to sleep. We sold belts, bearings, safety equipment, and machine parts to factories across northern Ohio. We never became famous, but we became dependable. By the time I turned 68, we employed 58 people. Some had worked beside us for more than 20 years. Ellen used to say the company had 58 employees and at least 200 people depending on it. She counted spouses, children, and elderly parents. That was how she saw responsibility. A payroll check was never just a number leaving our account. It was groceries, medicine, tuition, heat, and peace of mind. Nathan grew up in the warehouse. As a boy, he swept floors on Saturdays and rode beside me on delivery routes. He was bright, quick with customers, and impatient with anything he considered old-fashioned. I mistook that impatience for ambition. When Ellen died after a short battle with pancreatic cancer, I lost my wife and my balance at the same time. Nathan was 41 then. He had worked in sales and operations for the company for nearly 15 years. 6 months after the funeral, he told me I should step away. "Mom wanted you to enjoy what you built," he said. "Let me carry it now." I wanted to believe him. More than that, I wanted to believe Ellen and I had raised a man who understood what the company meant. We created a 10-year purchase agreement. Nathan received day-to-day control and the title of president, while I retained 52% of the voting shares until he completed the scheduled payments. Nathan held 30%. The remaining 18% belonged to an employee ownership trust Ellen had established. If Nathan committed fraud, concealed a conflict of interest, or defaulted on the agreement, his management authority and temporary proxy over my shares could be revoked. My attorney, Miriam Grant, insisted on those protections. Nathan called them unnecessary. I called them paperwork I hoped we would never need. For the first year, the arrangement seemed to work. Revenue grew, and Nathan hired Vanessa Reed as finance director. She was 39, polished, confident, and always prepared with an answer. I did not know then that she had also left behind questions about vendor payments that no one had pursued. Nathan was married to Melissa, the mother of my grandson Luke. Their marriage had been strained for years, but I believed they were working through it. Then Melissa called me one evening and asked whether Vanessa attended an equipment conference in Chicago with Nathan. I said yes. Melissa was quiet for a long time. Nathan told me he went alone. Within a month, Melissa moved out. Nathan denied the affair until she showed him hotel receipts. Even then, he blamed loneliness, pressure, and the demands of running the company. He blamed everything except himself. I told him his personal choices were his responsibility, but Vanessa could not remain in charge of company finances while they were involved. Nathan accused me of trying to control his life. "You gave me the company," he said. "I gave you the chance to earn it," I answered. "That is not the same thing." That was the first time I saw real hatred in my son's face. 3 months later, I noticed a payment to a vendor named North Coast Process Solutions. The invoice was for $48,000 in inventory management services. I knew every major vendor we used, but I had never heard of that one. When I asked our purchasing manager, she said Vanessa had instructed her not to review finance department contracts. I found 3 more payments. Together, they totaled $186,000. Vanessa told me North Coast was a consulting company, helping with a confidential acquisition. Nathan said the same thing, almost word for word. When I asked to see the contract, he told me retired owners should not interfere with active management. I still had access to the accounting system, though I rarely used it. One Tuesday evening, I logged in from my home office. The North Coast invoices had been approved through an old administrator account bearing my initials. The attached documents showed my electronic signature. I had not approved them. I printed what I could and called Miriam. She advised me not to confront anyone until we hired an independent forensic accountant. The audit was scheduled to begin the following Monday. It never did. On Friday morning, 2 detectives arrived at my house with a search warrant. They found copies of the invoices in my desk, banking documents in my filing cabinet, and a rubber signature stamp Ellen had ordered years earlier for routine vendor letters. I had forgotten the stamp existed. They also found statements for an account opened in my name at a bank 40 miles away. $186,000 had passed through it before being divided among 3 other accounts. The mailing address was a post office box. The identification used to open it carried my name, my date of birth, and a copy of my driver's license. Everything pointed to me. I told the detectives the documents had been planted. I told them about the audit. I told them Nathan and Vanessa had access to my records. Then Nathan walked into the station with his attorney and said he wanted to cooperate. My own son gave them emails that appeared to show me ordering Vanessa to create the fake vendor. He produced a voice message in which a man who sounded enough like me said, "Use the old account. No one needs to know." The recording was short and damaged by static. My lawyer challenged it, but the prosecutor said a jury could decide how much weight to give it. Nathan cried during his first interview. I watched part of the recording later. He covered his face and said, "I wanted to believe my father, but the records don't lie." At trial, he was even better. He told the jury I had struggled after Ellen's death. He said I resented losing control of the company. He described me as proud, secretive, and increasingly confused. Every truth he mentioned was bent just enough to support a lie. Then the prosecutor asked whether Nathan believed I had stolen the money. My son looked directly at me. "Yes," he said, "I do." I was 70 years old when the judge sentenced me to 30 months in state prison for fraud, theft, and falsifying business records. I remember the sound Melissa made behind me. I remember Luke, 16 then, trying to stand before a deputy asked him to sit down. Most of all, I remember Nathan lowering his eyes as if my shame were too painful for him to witness. He had created that shame and still wanted credit for suffering from it. Prison reduces life to doors, numbers, and permission. A door opens when someone else decides. A light turns off when someone else decides. You eat, sleep, work, and speak inside boundaries chosen by strangers. At 70, I learned how quickly a person can become a number even when he knows he is innocent. My number was 41872. For the first 6 months, I expected Nathan to visit. I told myself he needed time. I thought perhaps Vanessa was controlling him, or his attorney had advised him to stay away. No visit came. I wrote to Luke every Sunday. I told him about the prison garden, the old radios I repaired in the maintenance shop, and the books I was reading. I never asked him to choose between his father and me. I only wanted my grandson to know I had not forgotten him. He never answered. Nathan eventually sent one letter. It contained no apology and no family news. He said Coal Industrial Supply was under pressure because customers distrusted a company founded by a convicted thief. He asked me to sign a voting proxy, giving him complete control while I was incarcerated. "It is the only way to protect what is left of Mom's legacy," he wrote. I refused. 2 weeks later, Miriam learned that Nathan had already filed a copy of a power of attorney I had signed during Ellen's illness. The document allowed him to manage limited business matters if I became incapacitated. He claimed imprisonment made me unavailable and therefore activated his authority. Miriam challenged it, but civil proceedings moved slowly. Nathan controlled the records, the building, and the boardroom. I had prison phone calls limited to 15 minutes and letters that took days to arrive. He used time as a weapon because he knew I had so little of it left. He fired George Ellis, our warehouse manager, after 31 years with the company. He dismissed payroll supervisor Carla Jensen and 2 purchasing employees who had questioned Vanessa's vendor files. Each was offered severance only if they signed a statement saying I had bypassed normal controls. George refused. Nathan also moved Vanessa into the house where he had grown up. The house still belonged to a family trust I had created after Ellen's death, but Nathan had the right to live there. He removed Ellen's piano and announced his engagement to Vanessa before his divorce from Melissa was final. I learned those details from Miriam, not from my family, that someone was George. 5 weeks before my release, workers began clearing our original warehouse for sale. The building had been used mostly for overflow inventory since Nathan moved operations to a newer facility. George heard about the sale from a former employee and asked the property manager whether he could collect an old tool chest he had left behind. In the network closet, behind a disconnected monitor, he saw a small gray server with 2 green lights still blinking. Years earlier, after a ransomware scare, I had paid for a separate backup system. Every night, the main accounting database copied itself to that server through a one-way connection. It did not merely save the final numbers, it saved earlier versions of documents, user logins, creation times, and changes made during the day. Nathan knew about cloud backups. Vanessa knew about the primary server. Neither of them had worked at the company when George and I installed the warehouse mirror. George called Miriam before touching anything. She hired a licensed computer forensics firm. With the property manager present, they photographed the cabinet, documented the serial numbers, and made a verified copy of the drives. That chain of custody mattered. We had already learned what happened when evidence could be dismissed as something an angry old man had altered. The backup did more than support my story. It showed how the story against me had been built. The North Coast invoices had first been created under Vanessa's administrator account. 2 days later, she copied them into my old account and changed the displayed author name. The server preserved both versions. The payment approvals came from Nathan's office computer on nights when I was recorded entering my retirement community across town. One document carrying my signature was created 11 days after I had been arrested and my devices had been seized. The bank application had been scanned on Vanessa's printer. The damaged voice message was assembled from 5 separate recordings of me speaking during management meetings. The backup contained the originals. My words had been cut apart and rearranged. Then the forensic team recovered deleted messages between Nathan and Vanessa. In one, Vanessa wrote, "If Raymond starts the audit, North Coast is finished, and so are we." Nathan answered, "His old account is active. Everyone already thinks he can't let go." Another message arrived the night before my arrest. Vanessa wrote, "Are you sure you can testify?" My son replied, "They will believe me. I'm the one person who has no reason to lie." I read those words in the prison library while Miriam sat across from me. For 2 years, I had imagined there might be some part of Nathan that had panicked, followed Vanessa, and then become trapped in a lie too large to confess. His message ended that hope. He had not been trapped. He had prepared. Miriam filed an emergency motion to preserve the evidence and reopen my case. She also gave a copy to Detective Ortiz, who had investigated the original theft. Ortiz came to see me 3 days later. She did not begin with an excuse. "Mr. Cole, I believed the evidence," she said. "I was wrong." I respected her for saying it plainly. "What happens now?" I asked. "We verify everything. We follow the money. And you tell no one we found the server." Nathan was negotiating to sell Cole Industrial Supply to a national distributor. The transaction required my signature because I still owned 52% of the voting shares. He had delayed the closing twice while arguing that my conviction should allow a court to transfer my interest. The buyer had given him a final deadline. That explained why he was waiting at the prison gate. Detective Ortiz believed Nathan might reveal more if he thought I had been broken by incarceration. She asked whether I could let him believe that for one more morning. So I stood beside his black sedan, holding the agreement, and listened while my son described the small apartment he had chosen for me. "You'll be comfortable there," he said. "Vanessa can help manage the money so nobody takes advantage of you." I almost laughed. Instead, I lowered my eyes. "I need to see the company one last time," I said. "Then I'll sign." Relief crossed his face so quickly that he could not hide it. "Of course," he said. "We have a board meeting at 10. The buyer will be there. You can sign everything at once." He opened the passenger door as though performing an act of kindness. Across the road, the blue sedan pulled away. During the drive, Nathan said several older employees had retired, though I knew they had been fired. He said Vanessa had brought discipline to the finances. "What happens to the employees after the sale?" I asked. "That won't be your concern." It was my concern for 34 years. He gripped the steering wheel. That way of thinking is why the company almost died. There it was. Not regret. Not shame. He still needed my life to be a failure so his choices could look like rescue. When we reached the new headquarters, the receptionist stared at me. She was young and did not recognize me at first. Then she saw Nathan beside me and understood. Two employees near the stairwell stopped speaking. My photograph had once hung in the lobby beside Ellen's. Both were gone. In their place was a framed magazine cover showing Nathan beneath the words, "A New Generation of Leadership." Vanessa met us outside the conference room. She wore a cream suit and Ellen's pearl earrings. I knew those earrings because I had fastened them for my wife before our 30th anniversary dinner. Ellen had left them to Melissa, not to Nathan. For a moment, the sight of them hurt more than the prison gate. Vanessa touched one pearl and smiled. "Raymond, you look well. Prison must agree with me." Her smile disappeared. Nathan stepped between us. "Dad is prepared to cooperate. Let's keep this professional." Inside the conference room sat 3 directors, 2 attorneys, and representatives from the buyer. At the head of the table was a folder containing the sale agreement. A second folder held Vanessa's proposed employment contract as Chief Financial Officer of the combined regional division. If the sale closed, she would receive a signing bonus large enough to pay for a very comfortable escape. Nathan asked everyone to stand while he introduced me. "My father has served his sentence," he said. "Today, he has agreed to put the company's future ahead of old grievances." He made my silence sound like guilt and my signature sound like forgiveness. I took the chair beside him. "Before I sign, I would like Vanessa's contract approved." One of the buyer's attorneys looked surprised. Vanessa did not. "That can be arranged," she said. "And I want Nathan to state for the minutes that the North Coast matter was entirely my responsibility." Nathan studied me. "Why?" "If I am selling my shares, I want the record to show you are innocent." Vanessa placed her hand on his shoulder. It was a tiny gesture, but it told him exactly what to do. Nathan turned toward the board secretary. "The record should reflect that all fraudulent North Coast transactions were designed and authorized by Raymond Cole without my knowledge or Miss Reed's knowledge," he said. "My testimony at trial was truthful, and neither of us benefited from the stolen funds." "Thank you," I said. The conference room door opened. George Ellis entered first. He wore the same brown work jacket he had worn in our warehouse for years. Miriam walked beside him, carrying a black case. Behind them came a forensic accountant and a court reporter. Nathan stood so fast that his chair struck the wall. "This is a private meeting. Call security." Miriam did not raise her voice. "Security will not be necessary. Raymond Cole remains the owner of 52% of the voting shares. Your purchase agreement becomes void upon fraud, criminal misconduct, or concealment of a material conflict. This meeting cannot lawfully continue over his objection." Vanessa looked at Nathan. The color had drained from her face. I placed his envelope on the table. "I object," I said. The buyer's lead attorney closed the sale folder. "What fraud are you alleging?" Miriam opened the black case and distributed a short report. She did not hand out the raw drives. Those were already secured under court order. The forensic accountant explained the warehouse backup in language everyone could understand. He showed the original North Coast invoices under Vanessa's account, the later copies placed under mine, the computer addresses used for approvals, and the document created after my arrest. Nathan interrupted twice. The second time, the buyer's attorney told him to remain silent. Then came the bank application scanned from Vanessa's printer, the original voice recordings, and the reconstructed audio timeline. Finally, Miriam read the recovered messages. His old account is active. Everyone already thinks he can't let go. Are you sure you can testify? They will believe me. I'm the one person who has no reason to lie. No one looked at me. They all looked at Nathan. He turned on Vanessa before the accountant finished. She planned it, he said. The vendor was hers. She said we only needed Dad out of the way for a few months. Vanessa stared at him. You approved every transfer. Because you told me the money was temporary. You testified. You wrote the emails. Their loyalty lasted less than a minute. Nathan came around the table toward me. Miriam stepped between us, but I told her it was all right. Dad, he said, lowering his voice, you don't understand what she did to me. I understand what you did to me. I was afraid. The company was struggling. Melissa was leaving. Vanessa said the money would keep us alive until the acquisition. Then you threatened the audit, and everything moved too fast. It did not move too fast for you to plant documents in my house. He looked around the room, searching for a face that still belonged to him. I can fix this, he said. We can cancel the sale. I'll repay the money. You can come back as chairman. You stole 2 years from a 70-year-old man, I said. Do not speak to me as though time is something you can repay. His face crumpled, and for one dangerous second I saw the boy who had fallen from his bicycle at 8 years old. I remembered carrying him home with blood on his knees. The memory did not make me doubt the truth. It only made the truth hurt more. I'm your son, he whispered. You were also my witness. The door opened again. Detective Ortiz and Investigator Mercer entered with 2 uniformed officers. They served search warrants for the finance offices, the company server, Nathan's home, and Vanessa's vehicle. They also informed Nathan and Vanessa that they were being detained for questioning related to evidence tampering, theft, conspiracy, and perjury. Nathan looked at me as an officer took his phone. Tell them this is a family matter. I shook my head. You made it a criminal matter when you sent an innocent man to prison. Vanessa asked for an attorney. Nathan kept speaking until his lawyer ordered him to stop. As they were led from the room, employees gathered beyond the glass wall. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. Justice, when it finally arrived, did not restore the mornings I had lost or the letters Luke had never received. It simply stopped the lie from taking anything else. The buyer withdrew before noon. I called a special shareholders meeting that afternoon. My voting proxy to Nathan was revoked, and his authority as president was suspended. The board appointed Carla Jensen as interim president. She had started in payroll 23 years earlier and had been fired for refusing to sign Vanessa's statement against me. I did not return to the chief executive's office. I had spent too many years believing that protecting a legacy meant holding it in my own hands. Ellen had taught me better. A company survives when responsibility is shared with people who respect it. Carla's first decision was to pause the warehouse sale. Her second was to invite George back as operations advisor. Her third was to gather every employee in the break room. I stood before 51 people. 7 of the original 58 were gone, pushed out or frightened away during Nathan's control. My conviction is being reviewed, I told them. The evidence you heard about today is real, but the legal process is not finished. I will not ask you to decide anyone's sentence. I am asking you to help us repair what can still be repaired. No one applauded at first. Then George did. The sound spread slowly, not like a celebration, but like a room remembering how to breathe. Miriam found me a modest rental near the river. I refused the expensive hotel the company offered. After 2 years of concrete and steel, I wanted a window I could open myself. At night, freedom felt strange. I woke at count time even though no guard was coming. I ate too quickly. I stood beside open doors and waited for permission that was no longer required. 3 weeks after my release, Melissa called. She and Luke had watched the news, but she did not begin by asking about Nathan. Raymond, Luke thinks you never wrote to him. I sat down. I wrote every Sunday. She began to cry. After my arrest, Melissa had moved twice and changed jobs. Nathan told me she wanted no contact. He told her my attorney had advised me not to contact Luke. I sent the letters to the family house because it was the only address I had. When investigators searched Nathan's study, they found a locked drawer filled with unopened envelopes. My handwriting covered every one. There were 87 letters. Luke came to see me the next afternoon. He was 18 now, taller than his father, with Ellen's serious eyes. He carried the letters in a grocery bag because the evidence envelopes would not fit inside his backpack. For a moment, neither of us knew how to cross the room. Then he said, "Grandpa, I thought you forgot me." I held him as tightly as my arms allowed. "Never," I said, "not for one day." We spent hours opening the letters in order. I watched 2 stolen years return in fragments of paper. They did not come back whole, but they came back enough for us to begin. Luke asked whether his father was evil. It would have been easy to say yes. Easy answers are attractive when pain is complicated. "Your father did evil things," I said. "He made those choices more than once. But you do not have to turn him into a monster to tell the truth about what he did." "Do I have to forgive him?" "No one gets to order your forgiveness. You can love someone, grieve for them, and still refuse to protect them from consequences." That answer was meant for both of us. 2 months later, the court vacated my conviction. The prosecutor stood in the same courtroom where I had been sentenced and told the judge the state no longer believed I had committed the crime. The judge apologized for the failure of the process and dismissed every charge. Exoneration is not the same as erasure. Nathan and Vanessa were later charged with conspiracy, aggravated theft, evidence tampering, identity fraud, and perjury. Vanessa accepted a plea agreement and agreed to testify about how the accounts and audio recording had been created. Nathan refused the first offer. He insisted that I had manipulated the evidence because I wanted the company back. The warehouse server answered him better than anger ever could. Before his trial, Nathan asked Miriam whether I would meet him. I agreed to one supervised conversation at the county jail. He looked older than he had at the prison gate. Without his tailored suit and rehearsed confidence, he seemed smaller, but not yet honest. "Vanessa is blaming everything on me," he said. "You blamed everything on her before the police left the conference room." He looked down. I was scared. So was I. "You had the company. You had money. You had people who respected you. I spent my whole life being Raymond Cole's son." For the first time, I understood the story he had told himself. In that story, my life had taken up too much space, so taking it away felt like balance. "You could have built your own name," I said. "Instead, you tried to erase mine." He asked me to tell the prosecutor he had been controlled by Vanessa. I told him I would answer every question truthfully. I would not add cruelty, and I would not subtract responsibility. "If you loved me, you would help me. I paid for your education. I trained you. I gave you authority over the company. I defended you longer than the facts deserved. Love was never the thing you lacked." He began to cry, but he still did not say he was sorry for the years. He was sorry for the sentence he might receive. There is a difference, and by then I had learned not to hide it from myself. Nathan eventually pleaded guilty after the judge ruled the recovered evidence admissible. At sentencing, I submitted a written statement. I described the harm to the employees, to Melissa and Luke, to the company, and to me. I did not ask for the maximum punishment. I did not ask for mercy. I asked the court to consider the full truth. He received a prison term longer than mine. Some people expected that fact to satisfy me. It did not. A father does not celebrate his son entering prison, even when the son once celebrated a lie that sent his father there. I felt sorrow without rescue. That was the boundary I had failed to understand before. The civil court voided Nathan's purchase agreement. Funds recovered from the shell accounts went first toward employee claims. After sentencing, the family trust sold the house at market value, and Melissa received the items Ellen had left to her, including the pearl earrings. The rest of the proceeds went into an independent trust for Luke's education and future home. Nathan could never borrow against it, direct it, or use it to pay his legal bills. Cole Industrial Supply survived. Carla became permanent president after a unanimous vote. George returned 3 days a week and complained that retirement had been quieter. Several employees came back. We restored the employee health contribution Nathan had cut and created a formal whistleblower policy with outside reporting. I remained majority owner for another year, but I no longer held a management title. Then I transferred part of my shares to the employee trust. giving it a larger voice than Ellen and I had first imagined. At the ceremony, we placed Ellen's photograph back in the lobby. Beneath it was a small brass plaque with one of her sayings: "Responsibility is remembering who depends on your decision." Luke stood beside me when the cloth came off the plaque. He had started community college and worked 10 hours a week in the warehouse, not because I required it, but because he wanted to understand what his grandmother had built. "Do you think Dad will ever change?" he asked. "I don't know." That was the most honest answer I could give. 6 months into Nathan's sentence, a letter arrived. He said prison had given him time to think. He apologized for lying, though half the letter still explained why he had felt pressured. At the end, he asked me to support an early release request when he became eligible. I waited a week before answering. I told him I hoped he would use his time more honestly than he had used mine. I said I would not lie for him, pressure Luke to forgive him, or use company money to repair his reputation. If, years from now, his actions showed real change, I would be willing to read another letter. I did not write, "I forgive you." Forgiveness may come one day, but it is not a key another person can demand because a locked door has become uncomfortable. On the 2nd anniversary of my release, I returned to the prison gate. I did not go inside. I stood across the road beneath the same maple tree where Detective Ortiz had waited in the blue sedan. The morning was warmer this time. Leaves moved along the pavement. Cars came and went. Nobody there knew my number. I thought about the man who had stepped through that gate holding a paper bag. He believed freedom meant proving what had happened. Proof mattered. It cleared my name, stopped the sale, protected the employees, and exposed 2 people who had trusted a lie more than they trusted blood. But proof was only the first door. Freedom was opening my own window at night. It was reading 87 letters with my grandson. It was allowing Carla to lead the company without standing behind her chair. It was telling the truth about Nathan without spending every remaining day hating him. My son expected 2 years in prison to take my voice. He expected age, shame, and loneliness to make me sign whatever he placed in front of me. He was wrong. The gate gave me back my body. The truth gave me back my name. But the moment I truly became free was the moment I stopped protecting the man who had chosen to destroy his own father.